on this Monday, February the 22nd. Mrs. Kukla, call the roll
Thank you.
and read the preamble too.
Sorry. Mr. Donovan,
Here.
Ms. Faith,
I am present.
Ms. Britt,
Here.
Ms. Barnes. I don't see her yet. And Ms. Johnson.
Yes, I'm here.
Madam Chair, we have a quorum.
Thank you. Please read the preamble.
Thank you. My name is Liz Kukla. I'm the Secretary of the Board of Zoning Appeals, and I'm going to read the preamble this morning, February 22nd, 2021. In compliance with notification requirements of Ohio's open meeting law under COVID-19 emergency declaration, notice of this meeting has been publicly posted. All boards and commissions under the purview of the City Planning Department conducts its meetings according to Robert's Rules of Order. Actions during the meetings will be taken by voice vote. Abstentions from any vote due to a conflict of interest should be stated for the record prior to the taking of any vote. In order to ensure that everyone participating in the meeting have the opportunity to be heard, we ask that you use the raise hand feature before asking a question or making a comment. The raise hand feature can be found in the participants panel on the desktop and mobile version and activated by clicking the hand icon. Please wait for the chair or facilitator to recognize you and be sure to select unmute and announce yourself before you speak. When finished speaking, please lower your hand by clicking on the raise hand icon again, mute your microphone. We will also be utilizing the chat feature to communicate with participants. The chat feature can be activated by clicking the chat button located on the bottom of the WebEx screen. Next slide, Mo. All meeting activity is being recorded via the WebEx platform. These proceedings are also being live streamed via YouTube for public view. We have provided a link to the meeting for those who wish to speak on a particular case via our website and email. We have also received emails from those who have provided written comments on a particular matter. Back to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Do we have any postpone? Oh, we do. We have a withdrawal on 2429.
Superior Avenue, that's calendar number 20-204. That case will not be heard this morning. The applicants contacted us and stated that they're going to revise the drawings and meet the code. They're going to resubmit to Building and Housing.
We have a request for a postponement on East 116th.
Yes, this one is also coming from the applicant. They are going to also revise their drawings and may possibly not need to come back to us. But we're going to postpone it anyway to April 5th, of course, at your pleasure, Madam Chair.
It works fine. Without objection, board?
Without objection.
Thank you.
Without objection.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, everyone. Also, Madam Chair, this morning, if we could have the Pierpont applicant first this morning, we have an issue of res judicata.
Okay. And we can't hear that first because it's next on my list.
Okay. So is Chase White or Dave Lewis here?
Present, both of us right here.
Okay, great.
So, Madam Chair, our research showed, and I apologize that we were not able to do our research until Friday. Our research showed that this similar request, identical request, was made in 1969 and it was denied. The Board of Zoning Appeals denied the request for three, I believe it's 3 or 4. Yeah, 3. And they permitted 2-family at this site. So if I could ask Ms. Wagner to explain the legal standard or the legal concerns here. And also just to note, I will send this information out to the applicant. I will also send the resolution to the applicant, but at this time, we're going to request a postponement to allow time for the applicant to research the history and get back to us. And then if I could ask Ms. Wagner to explain the res judicata issue a little bit more.
Yes, res judicata means that if a case has already been heard, it cannot generally be heard again. And I will read the relevant provisions of the rule. Any appeal which is identical or substantially similar to a previously filed appeal will be considered a refiling of an appeal. And in this case, this is clearly a refiling. The rule goes on to say the board will dismiss any refiling of an appeal for variance as res judicata unless the applicant demonstrates a basis that would prevent the application of res judicata, including changed circumstances, substantial new relevant evidence that was not available at the hearing on the prior appeal, or that the application of res judicata would create manifest injustice. And I would just say in this case, the fact that a long period of time has passed is not in and of itself a legal basis for preventing the application of res judicata. The purpose behind the rule is that people can't continually ask for the same thing and be denied. I realize this was a long time ago. What the applicants would need to show here would be changed circumstances, new evidence that wasn't available at the time of the hearing of the prior appeal, or that if we apply it would create manifest injustice. And it probably, you want to be looking at if there have been changes in the neighbor. I mean, as far as res judicata goes, I can't explain it all. If you have doubts, you need to consult a lawyer. But basically what you need to do is look at whether there's a change in the neighborhood, perhaps, that would justify the board granting this now when they had denied it in 1969. But that's the most obvious thing here. What we will do is send you this rule and then reschedule this to allow you to present any arguments you may want to present. Do you have any questions? I know this is something you weren't probably thinking of.
Chase,
No.
Dave, do you understand?
Yeah, I don't think we have immediate questions. We have some evidence. We have some evidence for you, but you guys will need time to review it, so the extension would be reasonable.
Okay. Liz, do we have a date?
Of course, Madam Chair, we could do March 22nd or April 5th if the applicant has a preference.
Chase or Dave, which works better for you, March 22nd or April 5th?
March 22nd is good.
Okay. Without
Right.
objection, board?
Without objection.
Okay,
Without objection.
thank you. Okay, we'll see you on March 22nd. Okay.
Thank you.
Calendar 21007 at 5800 Brookside Drive. Go ahead, Ms. Faith.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Calendar number 21-007 at 5800 Brookside Drive. David Margolis and Shay McKinnon owners proposed to install a pergola and 2 basement window wells to existing single-family residents in an 811 family residential district. The owner can review on the certain application of the Cleveland Codified Ordinances as stated in the agenda and the public.
Thank you very much. Mr. Donovan?
Everyone for this case, please raise your right hand. I'm going to read a statement. I'm looking for a reply of I do with your name. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
I do. David Cron, architect.
Anyone else?
I do. David Margolius.
I do. Takeshay McConan.
I do. Kevin Kelly.
Anyone else?
Okay. Moving
Jamie Bauer, were you speaking as well? I didn't hear if you.
Yes, I do. Jamie Bauer.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Hearing that, move on to history.
Thank you, Mr. Donovan. There's been no change in the zoning since 1929. In the records room, I found in 1938, a permit was issued to erect a dwelling and garage In 1955, a permit was issued to erect a dwelling addition to a single-family home and to erect a private garage addition. There are no variances on file, and in the more recent history in the Acela system, I found that in 1997, a permit was issued to install a chain link fence. 2019, a permit was issued to install 16 rooftop solar panels. And also in 2019, a permit was issued to install 6 new windows. And that's all that I have, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. The legal standard, Ms. Wagner?
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. Appellant is requesting area variances from the side yard setback and side yard encroachment requirements of the zoning code. To obtain the area variances, appellant must prove that denying the request will create a practical difficulty not generally shared by other land or building in the same district, will deprive the appellant of substantial property rights, and that granting the variances will not be contrary to the purpose and intent of the zoning code.
Thank you very much. David Margolius, tell us exactly what you'd like to do.
Oh, okay, and I can defer to our architect, David Crown, if that's okay.
Sure.
Sure. So we sent you this presentation just to give you a brief update. So there are
Say
two.
your name again so we know who is speaking. That's all.
Sure. This is David Cron with Bialowski, Cleveland Architect. So 2 variances before you today. One is related to a pergola in place of an existing fence and wood structure. And the other is the conversion of 2 existing windows into evacuation windows from the basement dwelling area, which has a livable space today. So really just to make that safer. If we can go to the next slide here. To show you the existing conditions. So the photo on the left shows you the side of the house. You can just barely see, but that bump out has a window in it. So the top right photo shows you that window location. And then another window to the right of that under the kitchen. And then the photo to the back of the house, you're seeing an existing patio structure, deck, fence along the left hand there. So these 2 windows are proposed to be the area well windows, and the back deck would be replaced with a at-grade patio, and we're proposing this pergola structure. Next slide, please. So this is a quick rendering to show that new pergola. You can see that the pergola actually stands a couple feet from the property line. I believe the setback, required side yard setback, is 10 feet, which is quite far for residence area. The house itself is only 4 to 5 feet away from the property line, should be noted. And the new pergola proposed is within the existing fence structure as it is today. So we feel this is a reasonable request. Next slide, please. So the 2 area well windows, as indicated, so they have a living room downstairs in the basement now. These are being added by the owner to make the house safer for evacuation. The evacuation windows cause the area wells, in order to meet code with the depth of them and the ability to climb out, to be quite close to the property line. I think the biggest concern is not necessarily that the wells are that close, but that in theory, in an emergency, if someone evacuating that window might actually have to cross over the city of Cleveland's property line a foot or two, a step or two before they exit south towards the street in an emergency. Next slide, please. And it should be noted, just that if you're not aware, that this property is immediately up against property owned by the city of Cleveland, managed by the Cleveland Metro Parks. This is all part of the Brookside Reserve Reservation and has been, time out of mind. I believe that would continue to be the case, and I don't think that this side yard setback poses any problems for future construction, as this property, I think, is dedicated or platted to recreational use only. So we feel the request for the variance of the area well window evacuations is reasonable. That's it for me.
Only one family living in this home?
Correct.
I'd like to hear from some of the others that have come in. Local Development Corporation, I've forgotten your name and I apologize. Jamie?
This is Jamie. Yes, we met with the homeowners, David and Techie last week. We are in full support of this proposal. Because we already decided this, the window wells and the pergola are going to be facing the Cleveland Metro Parks. So there's no encroachment onto a real neighbor, and there won't be. We're not building anything there. So we feel that the zoning code was built to protect neighbors, and in this case, there's no neighbor that needs protection. We're supported.
I know the councilman was sworn in. Was there somebody else also? Okay, I'd like to hear from Councilman Kelly.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think this is a tremendous investment in the neighborhood. I think we need to encourage families to make these types of investments. The property as is beautiful, and it's right abutting, or the side yard is right to the metro parks. So this will cause no inconvenience to anybody, and it'll be it'll improve the value of their property, and by doing so, it'll improve the value of the properties in the neighborhood. I 100% support.
Thank you, Councilman. Is there anybody else that needed a comment? City of Cleveland, Maurice.
Maurice Rowland, City Planning Commission. Full disclosure, I live around a corner from this house. I also live on Brookside Drive. You do a beautiful job on your house. It's absolutely gorgeous. Yeah, you know, an open pergola, so it's an open structure, not much different than a fence, you know, and it's right next to the fence. And let's hope you never have to use those emergency egress windows. It's fantastic you're putting those in. So we are, yes, in full support of this project.
Thank you very much. Any questions, board? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, I think it's an excellent improvement to the house to add the egress windows. Improves the safety of the family living there. And given the testimony by the architect, the support of city planning, the CDC, and Mr. Kelly, our council person, I move that we approve these variances.
Second.
Call the roll.
Ms. Britt,
Yes.
Mr. Donovan,
Yep.
Ms. Vaith,
Yes.
Ms. Johnson.
Yes.
Calendar 21-007 is granted. It'll be ratified next week, and we will send you a letter.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all very much.
so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck.
008 at 887-915 East 72nd Street. Ms. Faith?
Thanks, Madam Chair. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're
Calendar number 21-008 at 887 through 915 East 72nd Street. WRJ Investment Fund, LLC, prospective purchaser, proposes to construct a new 4-story apartment building on City of Cleveland land bank parcels and State of Ohio owned parcels in a C1 multifamily zoning district. The owner appeals for relief from the strict application of the codified ordinances as stated in the agenda and the public record.
Thank you very much.
Everyone for this case, kindly raise your right hand. Again, I'll make a statement. Your response is I do with your name. Do you swear that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. Richard Singleton.
Jermaine Brooks.
Councilman Anthony Harris. Brett Crandall.
Joey Betland.
Anyone else? If not, on to history.
Okay. Go ahead, Ms. Kukla.
Thank you, Mr. Donovan and Madam Chair. There's been no change in the zoning since 1929. Madam Chair, I think the most relevant information is that in 1962, a certificate of occupancy was shown on the record stating that the use of the property is 6 suites. And then in our Acela system, we found that in 2019, a permit was issued to demolish a 3-story structure, which at that time was identified as a 4-unit apartment building. And that's all that I have.
Thank you very much. Legal standard, Ms. Wagner.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. Appellant is requesting area variances from the side yard, distance, maximum height, maximum gross floor area, off-street parking, and landscaping requirements of the zoning code. To obtain the area variances, appellant must prove that denying the request will create a practical difficulty not generally shared by other land or buildings in the same district, will deprive the appellant of substantial property rights, and that granting the variances will not be contrary to the purpose and intent of the zoning code.
Thank you very much. Who's going to be the spokesperson for WRJ?
How you doing, Madam Chair? This is Jermaine Brooks. I'll start, but we also have our architect, Brett Crandall, and Joseph, our engineer, on the phone as well.
Okay, go right ahead, Jermaine.
All right. As stated, we're seeking variances for a minimum of 1 through 4. It's a total of 6 variances, but we understand that with variance number 5, we would have to come back because we have to address a landscape plan. There's just no room for landscaping. We're looking to do possible fencing or be creative around the west, north, and east. And then we also sent in a revise for the bike rack. But the other variances have been supported through our design review and planning commission process. And we're just here humbly asking for those approvals.
Okay, who's going over the first 4?
So this is Breck Crandall, the architect on the project with 3 Squared Inc. Are we going through the presentation here? Yeah, we just quickly go through here. So good morning. Thank you for your time. This is just a location of the property on the east side. If we want to continue on through, we could just touch base on these.
Hold on for just a second. I have the wrong presentation up here, so just take a second. I didn't get the revision on this till early this morning.
Should we do a single?
Yeah, I'm having some technical problems.
Good morning, everyone. I can speak while Maurice is working on getting the updated slides on the screen, if that's okay.
Madam Chair, I'm not sure if you heard our planner, Sharonda Watley. She just requested to speak while Maurice is setting up the PowerPoint.
Oh, I'm sorry. Hold on. Let me make it louder on my computer. I'm sorry. Go right ahead. I didn't hear you.
Oh yeah, no problem. Good morning, everyone. Sharonda Watley. I'm the neighborhood planner. And so we have been working very closely with WRJ for this particular proposal. They came to us earlier, I guess probably about a year or so ago now, with their proposal to do multifamily housing using a shipping container material. And so the place where they want to locate this particular development had not seen any new development in several years. And so we were very intentional about how this particular proposal was cited, the materials, and then also the community engagement aspect of it. So we very intentionally had the proposal team and WRJ, as well as their support folks, to actually go through the design review process as well as the planning commission process. So they visited with design review and planning commission at every stage of the development proposal. So they did receive not only approvals, but also glowing compliments on their development. And so we are here today for the list of variances that they would require to get this particular development permitted. At our last planning commission meeting, they had not yet completed their landscaping plan. And so they do know that they have to come back for landscaping and for some smaller site amenities. I can read off the motion form from the planning commission meeting just so that you all have that in your record. But again, it's very much so supported by the community as well as by the council person and the Community Development Corporation. So with that, I will turn it back over to the presenters. It looks like Maurice has the updated slides. Thank you.
We're all set. Go ahead.
Thank you so much. Yeah, so just locating the project on the east side. We're between the waterfront and St. Clair Avenue along 72nd Street. We continue on.
Okay.
So these are just some quick exterior renderings of the proposal. There's a 64-unit apartment complex, 4 stories tall. It's just an aerial view of it, and we could probably move pretty quickly through these slides, just giving a glimpse of the project and the materials that we're proposing, how it engages with the street.
If you're not speaking, mute your microphone, please. We're getting a lot of.
Yeah, there's a tremendous amount of feedback.
Go ahead, Mr. Architect.
Okay. This is showing some of the existing conditions on the site. There were, as they stated at the beginning of the presentation, there were 2 buildings on the property that had to be demolished, one of which has already been demolished. The second one is pending demolition based on the approvals for this project to move forward. And continue on.
Is that somebody's garden?
There's actually a local gardener who befriended the developers. I don't know if you guys want to speak any more on that, but he's been taking care of the property, you know, clearing the snow, mowing the grass in exchange for use of the property to do his gardening. He's well aware of the development that's pending approvals and has been very kind in his reactions. And he's looking for another spot to keep doing his thing. This picture shows the 2 buildings, one of which has already been demolished, the other one is pending demolition. And then we wanted to draw attention to the very large building at the end of the block. This is kind of like framing the commercial corridor that we're hoping that this project helps to reinforce along St. Clair Avenue, which has a direct line into downtown. But there's just a much larger factory-style industrial building that's currently not being used for anything. That's at the south end of the block. So we wanted to call that into attention for reference of scale and continue on. This is probably the most important image that we can show in terms of like colored images. I'll call your attention down to the bottom image. We did an entire elevation of that street just to show the scale of this development in reference to the existing brownstone structures that are currently all abandoned right now, to the neighborhood that's on the opposite side of the block to the east, and then to the very large industrial structure that was pictured in the last slide. This particular image was actually the result of lots of conversations with the Planning Review Committee and the Neighborhood Review Committee that they actually reinforced the 4-story. That was verbally approved by them, but was also like kind of suggested. We showed them images of a 3-story structure in the same, and it didn't have the same impact. They actually wanted to reinforce that street a little bit more and encouraged the 4-story. So in terms of that variance, that's where that came from. We can continue on here. It's showing an exterior elevation from the opposite direction. So this is cutting east to west and just showing the scale there. Across 72nd Street, there is another industrial manufacturing building, and then behind us is just a neighborhood of single-family residences. Continuing. Here's a rendered site plan. We do have a more formal site plan that was submitted, but this is just to show our intentions in terms of landscaping, plantings. We are flanking the two building entrances. There's a double loaded corridor that runs down the length of the building from north to south. So at the north end of the property and the south end of the property, we've proposed parking, as much parking as we could possibly fit in there. We realize that we're about 22 spots short. We are factoring in the availability of parking on the street by the addition a few years back of a bike lane that's already installed on 72nd. And we also understand that there is a bus route that has a pickup right outside of the building. So factoring that as well. We've received a lot of support, again, through the planning and approval process on this layout based on the amount of parking that we could fit. Continuing. These are the parcels that are owned by WRJ. We show the 8 contiguous parcels and the placement of the building. The front setback was also something that was in discussion. All the rest of the buildings on the block are closer to the street by about 10 feet than what the zoning ordinance typically allows for. But we received that suggestion based on the planning review to follow kind of the street setback that all the other buildings on that block have, which brings the building a little bit closer and reinforces that streetscape a bit more. I'll also bring to your attention that the clients own 2 other parcels that are not continuous with the other parcels in discussion here, and we would be using those during the construction process as staging because of the tight parameters of the site. So we won't have things that are barricading off the street or anything like that. We do have room to kind of keep things clean and tidy as we work through the process. And then the last slide, which is a more formal site plan. I am going to turn it over to Joseph Betland of Kimley Horn Engineers because he's the one who prepared this document for us, and he can call a little bit more attention to it. Joey?
Yeah, hello everyone, and thank you again for your time this morning to discuss this project. We're really excited to help WRJ and TSI deliver this. So this is the site plan that we had come up with back in December that was sent over to the planning folks, City of Cleveland. I do see that on this screenshot, some of our setbacks and our variances requested aren't shown, but similar to the email that we got from Sharonda, we're looking for variances for the side yards, rear yards, front yards, building height, gross floor area, and parking spaces, those of all which have been previously recommended for approval. And then also for the landscaping or screening around the perimeter. And one thing that Sharonda noted was the bicycle spaces required, 4 of them. We do show that on the southwest corner of the building in this site plan with keynote number 13, just so you know.
Easy for you to say.
I would zoom in if I could. I apologize. So with regards to the side setbacks and how that may relate to the screening or landscaping, we realize how tight we are to our site perimeters. So, we use a 24-foot two-way drive lane spacing and 18-foot long parking stalls, which are pretty standard for us. Just with the dimensions of this building, that ended up with us being about only half a foot from back of the curb to the edge of the property line, which will make meeting the required landscaping or screening a little bit challenging. As Jermaine mentioned earlier, we're going to have to get a little creative on that, but definitely wanted to get your thoughts on what would be approved in those situations.
Also, if I did find number 13, I just enlarged it on my screen. My question though is, are these going to be assigned spaces to the residents? Because I don't want the guy who who usually parks on the right to use couldn't find a spot there. He goes over to the other guys on the other side of the, building. So are they assigned spots to the residents?
I would let Breck or Jermaine address that.
Okay.
Jermaine?
Yeah, we haven't got to that point yet, but yes, there will be some priority parking spaces for some of the units.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, continue. Is there somebody else that needed? Oh, I know the councilman is with us.
Madam Chair, this is Liz Kukla. If I could jump in.
Yeah.
Since the site plan is on the drawing and the the site plan that we were just looking at on the PowerPoint here, and since the architect is speaking, to the left of the building and the parking lot there is an apartment building. And the parking lot is very close to the apartment building. So can the appellant explain, will there be a board-on-board fence there to block the headlights from shining into that multifamily unit to the left of I guess it would be to the north, technically, of the project area?
Yes, to answer your question, we would like to do some sort of screening to the north and south, and to the east, where we're going to have the residential properties. We would love to create some sort of barrier there. We didn't want to take that conversation too far before talking about the overall site plan, because there were so many variances that were kind of wrapped up into this conversation. And that's why we didn't finalize a site plan, because there's a lot of effort that goes into that. And we just didn't want to go too far in a direction without getting feedback from people like yourselves. And so we are completely, intent on putting some sort of a barrier there. We are looking at fencing options with your approval. That's what we would plan to do, yes.
So, Madam Chair, that it is unusual that we get the request at the table for recommendations like this. Generally we get drawings that show the proposed, and sometimes the board will suggest other options. So just to note that this drawing right now is not the final drawing, and we would need to hear back from the appellants as to what they will do there, Madam Chair. And I guess maybe even Ms. Watley could jump in to say what the design review might want to see along that edge by the multifamily unit.
Well, I see to the north, I have it on the plan, it says chain link fence, but that's not what we want.
That's existing.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yep, that's on the residential property side of things, and that's an existing fence.
One option that we could review is if we were able to decrease our two-way drive lanes inside the lots from 24 feet to 22 feet. That would gain us a lot of necessary spaces on the north and south side, plan east and west of the site, in order to put up those barriers that you are speaking of there to meet that code. But again, 24 feet is what is typical. And I would maybe ask Ms. Watt to speak to if we'd be allowed to do that or not. That would save us a lot.
Sharonda, are you still with us?
Yes, I'm still here. So I would be supportive of them narrowing that drive apron and that aisle to get some additional footage along those property lines. I do believe that the committee would want to see some mixture of landscaping and or fencing to provide that screening. And so again, they do have to return for their final landscaping plan. And so I would hope that we would be able to see some of those final details worked out at that point.
Yeah, and we will absolutely be working with 3 Squared and WRJ to put together a landscaping plan for your review. Like Breck said, we just didn't want to put the cart before the horse too much, since there's so many things that we're asking for variances on.
Madam Chair, this is Kelly. I have a question.
Yes.
So can you all just break down exactly what you want us to approve today? Because you're going in one direction with we need recommendations on this. we can minimize this and do that. So today, as the zoning board, we have to approve certain variances that you're asking us to approve. So we need to know exactly what you need approved today. And then if you need to come back to us, you can come back to us.
Yeah, that would be all variances except number 5, which is the landscaping and screening.
Correct. So that would be the side setbacks, the height restriction, the gross area of the structure proposed, the amount of parking spaces, and I believe the final variance, number 6, is not applicable because we do have the bicycle parking proposed. So it's numbers 1 through 4 of the 6 requests.
But Madam Chair, this is Liz Kukla. Is the appellant stating that they will meet the code in that instance, or that they're expecting to do some sort of combination of fencing and landscaping? Because the required landscaping is 4 feet on the north side and 4 feet on the south side, I believe.
So I think 3349.08 states that 4 foot wide, densely screened year-round landscape strip or 3 to 6 foot high screening is required. So if we were to give some combination of, call it 2 feet of landscaping and a 5 or 6 foot high fence, I believe that would meet my interpretation of the code.
Yes.
But, and I'll have to look at the code to see if this is a specific variance, but we just wanted Ms. Watley's approval to go with the 22-foot drive lane compared to the 24 feet, which buys us room to put that fencing in on the north and south side.
Does that answer your question, Mrs. Kukla?
Yes, Madam Chair. So it makes sense then that they would not be requesting a variance from item number 5 then.
We'll have to come back on those.
And Breck, one thing I wanted to note is that on this list, and I know you had mentioned the front setback earlier. I do want to just make sure we have formal approval for our 10-foot front setback, because even though we've had, preliminary approval on that, I believe it still would be a zoning variance. Am I correct on that?
That would be my understanding, because it initially had a larger setback in the front than that. But the code does state that it's, you abide by what your adjacent buildings are, and based on the formal suggestion by the planning review, and the, not seeing it on the list here today has led me to believe that that's approved. But is our understanding correct on that? Do we have a formal approval on the front setback being reduced to 10 feet?
That would be a Rick Riccardi question. Rick, are you online? You'll have to type it in the chat.
Madam Chair, I did receive an email from Rick Riccardi stating that he had budget hearings this morning. But if I could respond to that, Madam Chair, it sounds like there's been a revised drawing that needs to be reviewed by Building and Housing again.
The engineered site plan, preliminary site plan, let me say, that was reviewed a few slides earlier is the latest drawing that was issued, which shows the 10-foot front setback. It will be revised to update with the landscaping and the fencing requirements that was just discussed. But the other zoning variance items should be up to date in there.
So, Madam Chair, as you know, you are limited in your ability to grant front yard setbacks. So really, it seems that we should have a postponement to make sure that the revised front setback meets the zoning code before we grant variances on a preliminary plan that possibly Building and Housing hasn't seen.
This is Councilman Harrison.
Good morning, Councilman.
Good morning. Question, Sharonda, if Sharonda, are you still on the line?
She is.
Yes, I'm still here. Thank you.
The ordinance that was submitted for my review that I approved, that is supposed to be introduced to council, if I'm not mistaken, that is the remedy for the setback that discussed during design review and planning commission, correct?
The ordinance that you are referencing are for the single family infill housing proposal that they went through the design review process for. So we did actually have to update the front yard setbacks to get that particular development proposal through. So these are two separate proposals.
So, okay. My understanding was that the ordinance that I would receive would have for this project and as well as the infill housing, because it was noted that zoning did not have the ability at that point to approve or grant the request that I guess is in question now, right? Or am I wrong?
For the infill housing development, yes. So the infill housing went through the design review process and planning commission before this one did. So Shannon is saying that the map change was for East 73rd, and that was the site of their infill housing proposal.
But my last point is that we should have done the same thing for this request as well, since the zoning cannot, can they or can they not grant what has been asked today for the setback, and does that have to come by way of legislation?
Well, I would say that
if I could intervene here, even if they had been written up for a front yard setback, it could not be granted here today because it hasn't been advertised and written up.
Okay.
Then there's a separate issue of whether the board has the authority to grant it and or whether, you know, what the map setback is and what the setback is for other neighbors. Shannon is saying it would need legislation, so it sounds like the councilman needs to introduce similar legislation for this one. But in any event, the board can't consider that today because that plan wasn't submitted or reviewed by Building and Housing.
Kelly, do you have your hand up?
Madam Chair, I would say I agree with that. We can't even, the front yard setback variance is not even on the list. So we don't even know at this point whether they need it.
Exactly.
Thank you. I appreciate that because it's not listed here in the items 1 through 6.
Right. So
it's not. But the point I was making was that I wanted to be clear that we all understand that this issue did come up before, right? And I wanted to all of us to be clear whether, regardless of whether it's on the agenda, that what needs to be done or what we should do at this point. So now we know by Shannon that legislation will have to be introduced. So we'll work on that.
Oh,
sure.
Yeah, the only thing I'll say is that we originally had the building abided by the setbacks, and it was actually the neighborhood review that suggested that we pull the building closer to the street to reinforce what they see the future of this. So we're willing to take any steps necessary to make sure we seek approval on that, because it was a formal recommendation as a result of those meetings. So I guess today what we're looking for is an understanding and an approval of items 1 through 4, so that we could revise our site plan and our landscaping documents to abide by that, knowing that we will get approval on those items and return with a fully revised site plan to seek approval for any loose ends.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I think we're at a point where we understand there's missing information here that's going to be very directly impacting our vote and our looking to support the program. I think there's an understanding of which of the variances are requested that are going to be endorsed, but there's a major piece of legislation that has to get done, and I think we should withhold any decision waiting for that to happen and then coming back as a whole rather than piecemeal.
If I could, this is Councilman Harrison.
Go ahead, Councilman.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. As I appreciate Mr. Donovan's comments, I mean, the legislation will be drafted just as the infill housing has done, and it will pass council committee. I don't see a reason why we should hold the 1 through 4 while we are waiting for the setback that is done in a completely opposite manner of this board. It has my support as the vice chairman of that committee, and it will have the support of the committee, and we'll move forward. So I would hope that in the essence of time, that so that the developers and applicants can continue their necessary work to revise their plans and so forth, that we not stall this and we move it on. This is a very, very important project to that area. This will help jumpstart many other projects that come to that neighborhood. As we've heard, that this neighborhood is not seeing this level of investment for decades. When I say decades, I mean 3, 4+ decades. And so any efforts to stall this process, not intentionally, but to me will serve as an adverse impact. We don't want to lose interest of those in the community, those around, and those participating. So I would respectfully ask that this board move forward on 1 through 4 as noted, knowing that this will be carried through by myself and city planning, that it is introduced in a timely manner and approved through council.
Councilman, let me just ask a question of Rick Riccardi here, and that is, do you need?
Here. He's at budget hearings.
Oh, okay.
But we
the question was going to be like, can you pull a permit if we haven't completed our work?
Front yard setback is not even on this list today, so I don't understand why we're having a whole conversation about a variance that it's not even in front of us today.
Agreed.
Agreed. And Joe Duffy from the executive director of St. Clair Superior typed in that he is for this because of the psychological win for the community.
Then if I can, Madam Chairwoman, one last point from Councilman Harrison is that Miko's Foundation was also the CDC for the area, in support of the project, and I'm not sure why they aren't on the call this morning. So I wanted to make that note.
Thank you, Councilman. Was there anybody else that was sworn in to speak? Any other questions, board members? We're only going to be, if we go ahead, we're only basically making decisions on 1 through 4 today.
Right. Madam Chair, I just had a question on number 6. Is it correct that the number 6 for the bicycle spaces that has now been fulfilled, so that's off the table?
Yes, it is on the plan. I saw it, number 13.
Okay, great.
So, Madam Chair, this is Liz Kukla. The only concern is that the applicant keeps stating that he's coming back. This board does not do preliminary approvals and go back and forth like a planning commission does. So as Ms. Britt stated, what we're reviewing today is what you're going to get. So if you're planning to change it and it may end up that you have to adjust the building and such, you would have to apply all over again at Building and Housing to get this through. If it's granted today as it is. So just wanted to let the applicant know that, again, this board is not a type of board where we give preliminary approvals and you can come back and get approval for this and that. It is what it is today.
The only thing that should change is the width of the drive aisles from 24 to 22 feet to give us space to meet the landscaping and screening code on the north and south sides. We don't anticipate any movement of the building or any setbacks from property lines. That would be the only thing that we'd be changing is the 2 feet of parking area in order to meet the landscaping code.
And Madam Chair, to Mr. Rulins from City Planning, I noted that Ms. Leonard stated something about the drive aisles not being permitted to be 22 feet wide. Are you aware of that issue, or could Ms. Leonard expand on that?
Let's let Ms. Leonard, Shannon, do you?
Yeah, so generally when you have 90-degree parking with two-way traffic, the requirement by Building and Housing is 24 feet. And so that would be a Building and Housing approval that would have to be completed regarding that. And I don't think city planning has the ability to change drive aisles.
So, Madam Chair, that would be another zoning issue that would be added to the list of variances required then if the applicant wants to go forward with reducing it down to 22.
Do you understand that, Joe and Brett? Brett?
Yep, I understand. Breck and I can discuss that offline with WRJ.
Okay.
If you have 45-degree parking spaces for two-way traffic, you can come down to 21.
Okay, understood. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, so are we postponing this case, board? Is that desire of the board?
I don't see why we can't move forward with what they've requested, and if they need to come back, they understand the point of that if anything changes from what we approve or disapprove today, that they will have to refile all over again, and they are on record understanding that. So why we can't move forward with what the one or as they asked.
In other words, we're going to basically stay with 24 foot, and if they reduce it down, they will come back, or vice versa. Kelly, I'm talking to you.
If they have to change anything, it'll trigger. I mean, building a house will trigger. It'll come back to us anyway. So
Right, right.
It's going to be reviewed by the building and housing, whatever we recommend, right?
Correct, Madam Chair. The resolution that will be written up as a result of the decision today will be attached to the original application. So whatever is, so that our conditions today or any comments, well, just the conditions themselves would be noted on the permit that is issued.
Okay. Kelly, would you like to make a?
well, Madam Chair, given the testimony and support from the councilman, the CDC, as well as city planning, I move that we approve the variances as requested for calendar number 21008, noting that we are only approving numbers 1 through 4 on the variance list, and they will come back for landscaping. And if they do change any other plans from this approval, that it will trigger a new approval to come back to us, as well as the bike parking has been satisfied in the existing submitted to.
Do I have a second?
I second that.
Thank you, Alana. Call the roll.
Madam Chair, if I could just jump in. Again, it's a little confusing, the language that Ms. Britt used about coming back. Does she mean coming back to us, or that they would have to reapply to building and housing?
I'm saying that if they have to come back to us for number 5 because they have not submitted landscaping, unless they, fulfill the requirement, then it will not. They won't have to come back to us. But they have noted that they do not have a landscaping plan right now, and so that they would have to come back to us for landscaping if appropriate.
So, Madam Chair, to that, today we would be granting variances 1 through 4. And they would get the variances based on what was submitted, and they are technically not at, so they would have to reapply to building and housing. Again, we can't go back and forth unless you hold ratification. That's another thing I guess you can do. And it sounds like the council person does not want us to hold ratification.
But that's what we usually do.
No, I am fine if this is Councilman Harrison. I'm sorry. I am fine with holding ratification if that is what is appropriate at this time, if they believe that they're going to have to come back for the landscaping plan. I guess I would ask, is there an understanding that to the applicants whether they will have to reappear for the landscaping plan or variance?
They don't have one.
I'm confused on that. Right, I know they don't, but they have been discussing it with design review, myself, the CDC, and city planning, whether what has been discussed, if they in fact believe that they will have to return for variance as relates to the landscape. I'm confused. I don't know.
They are aware that they have to return to design review for the landscaping plan. They are aware of that.
Yep. I get that point, but does that in return have them to have to come back to BZA?
Yeah.
Madam Chair, if I could jump in. Today you have two options. You could grant the variance for number 5, which means that we will wait on a landscaping plan back from them. Or today you can grant 1 through 4 with the understanding that 5 and 6 will meet code, so that they will not need a variance for those items, and they will work with building and housing to meet the code there in sections for number 5 and 6.
Madam Chair, again, because I think that's not an accurate statement. They're asking you to approve 1 through 4, and the board can do that, and there's not really any reason to hold ratification. What they're telling us, if I'm understanding correctly, is number 5, they're not sure what they're going to do, if they are going to narrow the driveways, if they're going to try to have a code compliant plan. In any event, whatever they do for number 5, if it isn't code compliant, then they'll need to come back to the board. But holding ratification of 5 is granting it, making a decision on it is not appropriate at this time, because they don't know what their plan will be, whether they will need a driveway variance for a narrower driveway, whether they'll need a variance for different landscaping. I think they're just asking you to move on 1 and 4, and I don't see any reason why the board would do that.
Well, Madam Chair, if I could just jump in again. I'm going to be writing the resolution, and I'm just not sure what coming back to the board means. That they're going to apply again to building and housing, or we're going to try to reopen this specific case again to try, which we don't usually do.
Liz, remove the coming back language from my motion. That way, that will solve your problem, and that will solve everyone else's problem, and we can move forward from this case.
I appreciate that. Thank you. We ready for the roll, Madam Chair?
I was waiting for a second. Kelly gave the second, I'm sorry.
No, Alana gave us.
I mean, okay, thank you.
Right. So we're approving 1 through 4, and we have a second. We have a motion and a second on 1 through 4.
Call the roll.
So does that mean that we, in practice, are denying number 5 by not dealing with it at all?
No, that means you're not ruling on number 5.
Okay, okay.
Well, they've indicated that their plans aren't really finalized on number 5, and so, in essence, unless the plans turn out to be exactly the same as they are, they'll need to reapply. But that's really an administrative matter.
Unless the plans are code compliant, they'll have to reapply.
Right.
Madam Chair, and actually, as the appellant stated, if they decide to just put up a fence, they would be code compliant. The fence could be 3 feet high, 3 to 6 feet high, and they mentioned that they could do a 5 to 6 foot high screening, screening the parking lot from the residence district. So it may not be that complicated for them to meet the code in that respect.
Please call the roll.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Faye?
Yes.
Ms. Britt?
Yes.
Ms. Johnson?
Yes.
Calendar 21-008 is granted with the understanding that we are granting only items 1 through 4 today, and that the appellant will meet the code regarding 5 and 6. The resolution will reflect that, and it will be ratified next week, and we will send you a letter.
Liz, they've already put 6 is not even to be considered. It's on the plan.
Right, and it will reflect that. The resolution will reflect that they are meeting the code regarding bicycle parking.
Thank you very much. Okay.
Thank you all so much for your time
Thanks,
today.
Joel.
Really appreciate it.
No problem. Alana, you had your hand up? Are you waving goodbye?
I'm just waving goodbye.
Okay, great. Calendar 21-009 and 010. Go ahead, Ms. Faith.
And Madam Chair.
Oh, and 011 and 011, I lied.
Yes, right. So we have a package deal with calendar number 21009, 21010, 21011, respectively at 4720 Brook Park, 4820 Brook Park, and 4720 Brook Park again. Brook Park Auto Auction Corporation owner proposes to build a fence In a B1 semi-industry district, the owner appeals for relief from the strict application of the Cleveland Codified Ordinances. As stated in the agenda and the public record, items are reflective of height and for fencing and in non-residential district.
Tim?
Everyone for this, please raise your right hand. Repeat, or I'm going to read a statement. The response is, I do at your name. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
I
Ihab
do.
Riyad.
Melissa Reynolds.
Do Lucas Reed.
Anyone else?
I do. Melissa Reynolds.
Anyone else?
I do. Ihab Riyad.
Anyone else?
I do. Eric Kuhn.
Anyone else? Hearing none, it's time for history.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Mr. Donovan. The thing of this property is partially located in semi-industry for approximately the first 100 feet. And the rear part of the property is in a general industry district. In the records room, I found that in 1927, a permit was issued to erect an office building and scale, and also a garage on the site. 1928, a permit was issued to erect another building on the site. At that time, it was identified as being owned by ICE Fuel. In 1930, a permit was issued to erect a portable sales building on site. There are no variances on file for this address, and in the more recent history, I found that in 2011, a permit was issued to install 71 linear feet of cyclone fence with 12 inches of barbed wire on top. And that's all that I have.
Thank you very much. Legal standard, please, Ms. Wagner.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. Appellant is requesting area variances from the fence requirements of the zoning code. To obtain the area variances, appellant must prove that denying the request will create a practical difficulty not generally shared by other land or buildings in the same district, will deprive the appellant of substantial property rights, and that granting the variances will not be contrary to the purpose and intent of the zoning code.
Thank you very much. Who's going to be the spokesperson for Brook Park Auto?
Yeah, this is Ihab Riyad. I'm one of the owners of Brook Park Auto Auction. The current status of the land is like the line facing Brook Park Road is about 500 feet plus, and it has a chain link fence that's old, doesn't look good, and it's at least 7 to 8 feet high. This property is used as car auction, so there is a lot of cars parking. Having a 4-foot fence, decorative black, will look good, but it will not be protective. All what we're asking for is to have a 6-foot fence. It will be a huge improvement for 500 feet plus on Brook Park Road.
6-foot decorative fence?
Correct. It will be black steel fence, as shown.
Okay. And do we show where the fence is going to be installed? Is there a diagram of that? That's
Eric
the
can
fence.
talk to that. Yeah, that's the fence.
Is it all along the front in Brook Park?
Correct.
Is there other fencing besides that?
On the sides, there are chain link, but they are not showing from the street that much. That's the front on Brook Park Road.
Madam Chair, we also have Melissa. She may be able to give you more detail, Tim.
Yeah, Melissa from Brook. Go ahead, honey. State your name.
Hi, Melissa Reynolds, Roland Brothers Fence Company. We're just going to remove the existing fence and put the new fence in the same exact spot as the existing fence. The existing fence is currently 7 feet and has barbed wire. The new fence will be 6 foot overall, obviously no barbed wire. ornamental in nature, but it is a steel fence, so it does provide security and is much more sturdy than, say, an aluminum fence. It it would look a lot better than the fence that's there. If we push it back where it would need to be to meet the requirement, which would be in line with the building, it would run right through the parking spaces at the front of the property. And the goal is to not lose those parking spaces. That's why we'd like to put it right back where the existing fence is.
Is there any opportunity to put a little landscaping there?
I don't believe that there is. Let me just look real quick. I apologize. No, there is a small buffer between the fence and the parking spaces, but if you push the fence back, you run the risk of when people pull into the parking spaces that hitting the fence, because the bumper sometimes goes over the little curb where the landscape strip is.
Can you go back to the picture, Maurice, of the front of the building?
Which one?
Oh, okay. Well, I'm going along with what Tim is suggesting about landscaping. But the building is set far back. I see that now. Oh, that looks like
there's some landscaping in this picture.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's my question. Can we carry that along the length of the fence so it creates kind of a visual green buffer that complements the fence?
Yes, that's, if we push the fence back to put the landscaping between the between the fence and the sidewalk, what it does is it creates the fence being right up against the parking bumper, which means the fence can be damaged from people pulling into the parking spots.
Well, you put the landscaping on the other side of the fence is the answer.
Yes, to where they have the buffer now, there's a few trees and some small landscaping. That would be up to the owner what kind of landscaping that would go in there. We just are responsible for the fencing.
Right, but somebody here has to represent the owner. I think the owner is here.
I am the owner. Yes, the answer, yes, we can, but we will lose parking spot, or we run the risk, as Melissa said, that the fence will be beyond the landscape, and that runs the risk of damaging the fence or the cars while parking.
I don't see that. I see the landscaping being a buffer between where the fence is and where a car would park.
That's correct. But if we move the fence inside
keep the fence right where it's at, and you just put the landscaping, couple foot landscaping, so you can plant little bushes or something between the fence and the parking space bumper.
There's some landscaping already there between the bumper and that's where the fence needs to go, right where the bumper is.
Does anybody else see what I'm saying here or not?
Madam Chair, to Mr. Donovan, it does look like there is a 2-foot wide landscaping strip there. It's a very small.
It does appear to be that way. Yeah.
Pardon me?
You're
well,
right.
All I'm asking, what I'm suggesting is that 2 foot be used to put a bush or something in there that gives it a little green, if you will.
I think you can see from this picture that there definitely is a landscaping strip existing there now.
There you go. So if it's there, just continue to grow it, and if it's not there, fill in the gaps.
That is correct. The request is we move the fence inside of the landscaping.
I thought you were going to put the fence right where the existing fence is.
Yeah, if we can, that's our request, to put the fence right where the old fence is without moving it in.
And you still got this green buffer. I'm looking at it right now. So I mean,
Madam Chair, to Mr. Through the chair to Mr. Donovan. I think that you are asking that in that green space, the applicant add one or two more bushes, possibly a tree, to liven up that green strip area right there.
That's what I'm asking.
Yeah, we can do this, but our request is not to move the fence in more. Yes, we can add trees. I'm sorry, I did not ask, I did not understand that. But our request is to keep the fence where it is and agree to build it 6 foot instead of 4. And yes, we can add some bushes to the front. Yes, the
Do we have a
variance
plan that shows that?
there is an old plan from 2014. I can share it. I can email it with some bushes.
Well,
Madam
let's get
Chair.
it.
Madam Chair.
Madam Chair, you're muted.
Yeah, I just thought that I was. Yes, Alana, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I think the owner has a clear understanding of what Mr. Donovan is requesting, and just to recap, I think what we're saying is the new fence can be installed where the existing fence currently is. The
Right.
new fence will have a higher level of, it will be more decorative, and it will also not be as see-through as the chain link fence. So that achieves some aesthetic screening in and of itself. And that in addition, there is a landscape strip on the inside of the fence, and that the owner is willing to install some evergreens that would be appropriate for that situation, the full length of the frontage of the fence. Is that all correct?
Yes.
To the owner?
It is correct, but we have to, because it's a parking lot, again, we run the risk of the cars bumping into that. It has to be small bushes, and I really hope that it's not the whole front, because that's 500 feet plus, and the fence itself is decorative.
Right. The fence itself is decorative. So I think you would probably fulfill Mr. Donovan's request if you did like a creeping evergreen that would be ground cover, and maybe some euonymus or something that might creep up the fence. Something very low profile that would give some greenery, that would be evergreen, and would be neater looking and enhance the new fence.
Yeah, but sporadic, not the, I'm sorry for cutting you, but not the whole front, because that's 500 feet long.
Right. Well, I mean, just so you're not putting in one in the midst of the 500 feet, you know, let's say one per section or something like that. To Melissa, is it an 8-foot section of fence or 6 foot?
I believe they're 8-foot sections. Generally, when something's industrial, they do come in 8-foot sections.
Okay, so how many sections?
Can we have city planning appoint someone to work with the review of the landscape plan in terms of, you know, what is not enough landscape or what is too much landscape? And I'm taking it, I'm not looking at a site plan or anything, but do you put bumper guards then for the cars along this strip so that they don't drive into the fence or drive into the landscape? Do you have a bumper guard there for each parking space?
As far as I think, yes, but I am not sure, because this property has been used by Mannheim for the last 5 years.
Well, if you want to protect your investment, obviously putting either a curb or a bumper guard would be the way to go here. So
yeah,
since
yeah, I believe
you've been voicing this concern, not me, And I think that as a remedy, there should be the placement of bumper guards along here so that it will not diminish and basically destroy the investment you're about to make.
Madam Chair, we have Lucas Reed from Old Brooklyn CDC that wanted to make a couple of quick comments.
Obviously.
Go ahead.
Good morning. Pleasure to be here with you all. We did not have an opportunity before the session this morning to meet with the owners. So this is the first time we're seeing this project. But I would certainly suggest that the proposed fence as shown in the plans this morning appears to be an improvement on what is existing. Brook Park is very much sort of an industrial type track through our neighborhood, so it's not necessarily out of character or context. But to Mr. Donovan's points, I think it's very important that some type of landscaping be included here to soften sort of the starkness of such a large fence along the sidewalk. There have been a number of projects in the general vicinity recently that have added landscaping, which has gone a long way to improve the experience along Brook Park Road. And I think doing the same thing here would be a wise thing.
Lucas, would you like to be the point person to work with the owner?
We would be happy to do so.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, if I could jump in, this is Liz Kukla.
Stop jumping every morning.
It's my understanding that the curbing there would be enough to meet the zoning code. I don't know if you can see that there's a curb that that encloses that small landscape strip.
Right.
Too bad Mr. Riccardi is not here to confirm that, but my understanding is that a curbing is allowed as well as bumper guards.
Okay. Thank you, Liz. Go ahead, Alana.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
I agree with Mr. Lucas from the CDC that the proposed new fence is a huge improvement over what is existing. And Mr. Lucas has generously offered to be the point person to work with the owner on finalizing any landscape plans. I would move that we go ahead and approve the variances conditionally with pending a landscape plan being submitted that I'm sure will be appropriate to meet the needs of some aesthetic buffer for that area.
Second.
So, Madam Chair, this is Liz again. So we're going to hold ratification until we get a landscaping plan?
Exactly.
Okay. So, Madam Chair, I will call the roll. Ms. Britt?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yep.
Ms. Faith?
Yes.
Ms. Johnson?
Yes.
Calendars numbers 21 through 009, 010, 011 is granted conditionally pending a landscaping plan. Once we receive that landscaping plan, we will ratify your cases and we will send you a letter.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for all your help.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, calendar 21-012 at 1878 East 90th Street.
Okay, moving right along. Calendar number 21-012 at 1878 East 90th Street. Central Property 2 LLC owner proposes to erect a 4-story, 131-unit apartment building and accessory parking lot in an E2 multifamily residential district. The owner appeals for relief from the strict application of the Cleveland Codified Ordinances, number 1 through 4, as stated in the agenda and the public record.
Thank you very much.
Everyone for this case, please raise your right hand. I'm going to read a statement. Your response is, I do, with your name. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
I do.
I do.
Name, please. I need your name.
Dominic Durante.
Name?
Lamage Dachon, Aspiring Group.
Okay, anyone else? I thought I heard a female voice.
Matt, you gonna?
Matt Orhak, LDA Architects.
Okay, anyone else?
Alexis Mendoza.
Okay, anyone else? Hearing none, it's on to history.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Donovan and Madam Chair. There's been no change in the zoning since 1929. I didn't find any records in the records room on this property. I didn't find any variances on file, and there was nothing of note in the more recent history. Back to you.
Looks like there is no anything there. Go ahead, Ms. Baker. The legal standard, Ms. Wagner?
Yes. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. Appellant is requesting area variances from the maximum gross floor area, front yard setback, rear yard, and off-street parking requirements of the zoning code. To obtain the area variances, appellant must prove that denying the request will create a practical difficulty not generally shared by other land or buildings from the same district, will deprive the appellant of substantial property rights, and the granting the variances will not be contrary to the purpose and intent of the zoning code. Please note that section 32904C1 may restrict the board's ability to grant the requested front yard setback variance.
Thank you. Hello? Who's going to be the spokesperson for Central Property?
I'll start to talk. This is Dominic Durante with LDA Architects.
Okay, Dominic.
Okay, so in front of you is a site plan which actually shows two phases of apartments for the Inspiron Group on East 90th. What we're planning to do is 130 workforce housing apartments. This site is East 90th, which is opposite, like the heart of the Cleveland Clinic. This property is only about 150 feet to the north of the Chester Avenue right away. So it's basically across the street from the clinic. The building, I do want to make a couple of comments about the variances being requested. There are some changes. We are asking for the area variance, and that stays as in the write-up from Mr. Riccardi. But we do have a setback of the rear yard, which we requesting that will be less than what was listed. I think there was a miscalculation on the height of the building. And so we have a 25-foot setback is what we are requesting, or is what's required, rather than the number of 31.5. So we still have an 18.5 foot provided setback, rear yard setback, but our calculations show that the requirement would be 25 feet. So that's a clarification. And then secondly, there's a clarification that we really have 130 apartment units now, not 131. We are still providing 69 spaces. So then the variance, the requirement would be 123, not 124. So those two clarifications, please. And then the building itself is an L-shaped building, as you can see in the site plan. The longer leg of the L faces East 90th Street. Historically on this site, there were multifamily apartment buildings, and those multifamily apartment buildings were as close as, 8 feet from the East 90th Street. So we have a varying setback because of the design you'll see in the following drawings, where there's some movement on the front. So it varies from, I think we said 8 to 12 and 8 to 15. So that's just a clarification I want to make as well. And then the way the site plan is designed, we would have a drive off of East 90th that would take you to a parking lot at the rear of the property. So the planning of this is where the building faces the street. The parking lot is in the back of the property. On the left side or the south side of the building is a patio, a community patio, which you'll see in the following drawings. And phase 2 would be to the right, which we'll come back to you at a future date, where there'll be an additional workforce housings provided. So this would be then the phase 1 site plan. As I mentioned, the front entrance would be along East 90th Street, and that's where the building is actually closest to the sidewalk. And there's another entrance on the rear in the corner adjacent to the surface parking lot. And it's got the parking with set so that there's a drive lane and a drop off along the sidewalk at the entrance to the rear, and then the parking spaces are south of or to the west or to the back of that. Next page, please. These are black and white, not color, but we do have a lot of color in our landscaping plans. The entire edge of the property is landscaped along the sidewalk in the front of the property. There'll be landscaping, there'll be fencing along the edge of the property as well. The landscaping is being designed to have, seasonal color and texture, and, a variety of plants as you see in that. Pictures to the left. Next page, please. The building is primarily brick. It's 4 stories in height. There's brick and metal panel. It's sort of has a design of a base, middle, and a top, where the bottom story is all one color. And then there's 3 other colors of brick in the composition, 2 grays, 1 lighter, 1 darker, and then 1 warmer brick. But again, these are all black and white pictures, so you can't understand that. Next slide, please. Again, more elevations of the building with the west elevation and south, which is the west being the rear mainly.
And then just as a clarification too, we're averaging our building height at 49 feet 2 inches. So that takes the highest point that's over the front entrance area, as well as the lowest point of the parapet wall that would be several feet lower than that. So we're averaging at 49.5 feet, which is what we're basing our calculations off of.
Thank you, Matt.
Introduce who you are before you start talking, because this is for the record. So
sure. That was Matt Orhak, LDA Architects.
Thank you.
Next slide, please.
Thank you.
This is just a, okay. So that's the last one, Matt?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, then you want to go back to the site plan and we can talk about, okay, so that's basically our presentation for now. I think if the Inspiron group wants to say anything or the commission wants to, ask questions, we're here for questions and answers. Thank you.
Madam Chair, I have a question.
Yes, go right ahead, Alana.
To the architect, looking at your site plan here, could you tell us where your bicycle parking is and also your adjacency to public transit stops, please?
Well, we're like I said, about 150 off of Chester Avenue. So, the health line is just another, Euclid Avenue is just the other side of, Chester Euclid. So you have public transportation along, the arteries Chester and Euclid. The bike paths themselves, or the bike storage is inside the building. We have a bike room, and that's where the bikes are being located.
And what's your capacity in the bike room?
Matt, you know that offhand?
Yep. So our capacity in the bike room, we're calculating depending on the types of racks that are purchased and the exact layout anywhere from maybe 10 to 16 bicycle spots if we're doing a double decker rack or that sort of configuration.
And are there elevators in this building?
Yes, it's fully accessible. I mean, it meets fair housing guidelines. It's a fully accessible, brand new building. So everything is accessible, and there's 2 elevators to take people up and down in this building.
So if they wanted to take their bike up to their apartment, they could, or if
Absolutely.
someone is ADA, needs wheelchair, or has mobility issues, they can get up to the top floor.
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, great. That's it for me, Madam Chair.
Board, any questions? Let's hear from the others that have been sworn in. Chair, Councilman, good morning.
Good morning. I'm taking a break from the very exciting budget hearings to be here to support this project. We're very, very excited to be able to work with this group. They've been very, just been amazing to deal with for the community, and just coming to our community meetings, presenting this project, as well as just being mindful of the neighborhood, which is very important. Not just building buildings, but building. So not only am I excited about this building and focused on workforce development, focusing on our nurses and our teachers and fire and police, but also their community benefits agreement as well, where they're going to be hiring from the community. They're going to be providing sponsorship dollars to FAMICO's foundation once a year to go towards educational programs. They've just been very, very helpful. So I'm in support of this project. I look forward to seeing it being successful, and I hope that the committee supports this as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. Okay.
Madam Chair, this is Liz.
Yes.
The applicant hasn't spoken to the issue with the front yard setback. We sent them the zoning code section that restricts the board from allowing the front yard setback. There are only certain circumstances that the board can grant a front yard setback. For the applicant, speak to that, please.
Well, there's a hardship, obviously, to get the building to fit on this site with the depth that it is and the parking that we're providing. You can't place you have no choice but to put the building closer to the sidewalk in the front yard. And as I said, I know this is a very old code. This is 29, right? The zoning code. But if you look historically at the buildings that were in this location along East 90th, those buildings were very close to as close as we're showing, if not closer to the sidewalks that had been there for the last 100 some years. So the hardship is you just can't put a building on this site if you honor the setback that you mentioned. It's just not possible.
And this is Matt Orheck from LDA. We've positioned the building as well to also keep in a similar building line as the existing buildings that are going to remain on each side of the development as well. So we're trying to respect that we wouldn't have a very deep void in the building line of the existing buildings as well. So we're trying to respect that.
Is your argument that you're lining up with the adjacent building setback?
Our argument is that we're lining up with historically what's been on this street with the multifamily houses multifamily apartment buildings that were there, and set back a little bit further from those. But our argument is like putting the new building in the same position as the historic multifamily homes, apartments that were on this site.
So there's a calculation, a formula that's called for in terms of, getting around and allowing us to grant a variance on this issue. It's got geometry to it and everything else. Has anyone taken that formula and applied it here? And what's the results?
So we were going off of the non-conformance letter that we'd have to have 27.45 feet setback. So that's what we're basing our drawings and our argument off of, that non-conformance letter.
So what is your setback then? 20.
So our setback, as you'll see on that set right there, it's pretty small, but that ranges anywhere between, I believe, zoom in here on my set, anywhere between 11 and 15 feet. So it varies. So the front door on the sort of that left where the front door entrance is, that would be approximately 11 feet, and then those deeper setbacks are 15 feet.
Madam Chair, this is Lori Wagner. If I could jump in, as Liz says. The reasons that the board does not have the authority in the code, the code specifically prohibits the board from granting a front yard setback unless specific conditions are met. Historical conditions are not a factor that would be considered. The only thing I've heard that might meet that standard is adjacent buildings and whether it meets that formula. But otherwise, the board doesn't have the authority, whether even if they consider there is a hardship, which I believe there is, you would have to go to the councilman and ask for a map setback to override this. This is just a question of the council has not given the board the authority to do that, no matter how justified.
Yeah. Chair, as Shannon Leonard has typed in the chat, that would be the only way that you'd really be able to do this setback here. I have not heard any evidence presented that would allow the board to grant variance for the setback. As you know, it's very, very limited.
Yeah, which is my question is, why do we keep getting these? I'm starting to get irritated because we get these all the time knowing that we can't make a decision on them. So why are they written up to come to us?
They're clearly written up in the agenda. As you can see, that the board doesn't have those the powers.
Exactly. And so we spend all this time on a case talking about a front yard setback that we can't grant. And so it starts to get like, we just talking about something we can't make a decision on.
Understood,
So
Chair. Can I say something, Chair?
I didn't hear whoever wanted to speak.
It was Councilman Jones.
Go ahead, Councilman.
So, Madam Chair, what do I need to do? What do I need to do to push this forward? I need to provide something. That sounds like what I'm hearing.
Yep.
Yeah, we would have to do a map. Councilman, we would have to do a mapped setback on East 90th Street and change the setback requirement for that street so that they'd be able to go ahead with this project. And Shannon Leonard from our office can work with you on getting that done as quickly as possible. Unless of course the applicants can provide information that meet one of the other criteria that the board has to grant the variances. At this point, I have not seen that evidence.
But the buildings that is there still one of the buildings on phase 2 that's in place still, the multifamily apartments, Alexis?
Yes. Yes, there are 3 buildings still there.
So if you just look at the existing buildings that are there on East 90th, you can see how close they are to the sidewalk. So what you're saying is we have to draw a line that would be between those buildings and whatever's to the left and right of our property, and that would be the criteria to get the setback approved for the front yard?
There's a formula you have to follow. It's very explicit.
All right.
Madam Chair, this is Liz again. One of the things that they can do is show that there is a building that is closer to the setback, closer to the street line, within 150 feet of this site. Again, as stated in the piece of paper that was sent out to the applicants, the instructions say that they need to draw a line showing that that setback is more than what the proposed setback is on this site. Also, the other thing that they can show is that this lot is more shallow than the other existing lots in the area. So those are the two criteria I believe that the appellant would have to show to get an exception from the board today.
And that would apply to both sides of East 90th? That criteria is just on your side only, and you can't look at the precedent on the other side of East 90th?
Correct. It's only on the side that you're on. And again, we're not saying that it can't be done, but we don't know we haven't been presented evidence to what the setbacks are of the adjacent buildings to determine, whether you might meet the exception.
So this is Member. Can you go back to the proposed site plan for a minute?
Sure. 1 second.
While we're waiting, Councilman
Okay, is that
Jones,
up?
excuse me, while we're waiting, Councilman Jones had posed a question, what could I do? And, perhaps, and Kelly made some remarks to this as well, perhaps somebody should revisit the ordinance and see about including in other language that talks about things like the history of buildings adjacent to it and some of the issues that we're tackling here at the Board of Zoning Appeals that would allow us to make a judgment on this in the future. But maybe you need to go back to the ordinance and change some of the language to solve this problem.
Yeah, yes, sir. Well, that's fine with me. If so, just to be clear, I have to get back to budget hearings, but I want to make it clear that we are very excited about this project, and it has my full support. If Liz or someone could shoot me an email of what needs to get done, I'll have that back to you before the day is out. I don't know what does this mean if you have to reschedule a meeting with Experian, but if you can just send me an email requesting that letter as well as your advice on what type of ordinance needs to come up, and I'm actually on budget with development and sustainability. That is the board that I'm on. So if you can send that email to me today, then I can get that stuff done.
Councilman, I would have Shannon Leonard from our office that works with legislation email you today so you can get started on that. And I just wanted to be very clear here, City Planning is very much in support of this project. We are in support of the setback. It's just a technical difficulty with the Board of Zoning Appeals and their restrictions on what they can and can't grant.
And
Yes,
I mean,
Madam Chair, could I clarify for the councilman what I think the procedure we're following? I don't see anything on that map that shows that they're going to be able to establish an exception to the setbacks based on other buildings. I think what you need to do is issue an ordinance changing the map setback. And the board then would decide on all of the variants except for that one. And then if council passes the ordinance that you introduced for the map setback, then they'll be fine and they can get their building permit.
And how quickly do you have to wait for legislation to be passed for that to happen?
Yes. We can expedite that. We can get that going pretty quick.
So then you're talking about a couple of weeks until legislation is passed, correct?
Correct.
Councilman, I think what Maurice and Planning is saying is this is kind of a perennial problem for the Board of Zoning Appeals. The council has specifically said you can't do this. With almost every other variance, we have the right to do it if we feel the board has the right to do it if they feel it's justified, it meets the standards of hardship, etc. But this one issue, the board does not have the authority to do it, and therefore you know, I think what planning was saying is council as a whole would look at that part of the zoning code and maybe think about changing it. But for this immediate project, you just need to introduce an ordinance with a map setback. And as I said, I think it would be appropriate for the board to make a decision on the other variance request today and not make a decision on the front yard setback. And then at such time as council passes the ordinance changing the setback, then they would be in a position to apply for a building permit right away.
Okay, so we're able to, Madam Chair, are we able to move this forward? Can this be moved forward with the understanding that we're going to work on those other things?
What the board would do is just not make a decision on, these are misnumbered on here. It says 1, 3, 2, 3, 4. It's actually the second item, section 35704A. The board would just not make a decision on that one and would make a decision on all the rest.
We wouldn't be able to ratify it until the legislation's passed.
You can do it either way. Actually, you wouldn't make a decision on the last one either because the City Planning Commission needs to review. I don't know whether that's happened or not.
Okay. I'm going to get back on budget here. If I can get an email with all of that, and I'm going to get right on top of those things ASAP. We're basically saying that they're able to move forward in what they're able to do, except for the last thing that's going to need the ratification. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, I was muted. Nobody heard me. I thank you, Councilman. It's what we've been working on case all the time, and it drives us crazy.
Yeah.
We cannot make this decision.
Yes, ma'am. So I will find that so that we can make this easier for you all. If you can, once that email comes to me, and if we can move this process along, and we'll take care of that. Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So this is Mayor Warheck with LDA. We have the zoning setback marked on that plan, and we have the existing buildings within 150 feet shown on either side of the plan. Does that not meet the requirement under 32904C1? It says there's a building line and showing that building line on the same side that's in question. Because we have all that, we don't have a dimension for those existing buildings, but we have those drafted, and they could be scaled off the scaled drawings, and we're showing the setback line.
It looks from the picture that you drew, it looks like you're proposing to put your building in front of the existing buildings on either side. And also, I don't know whether they're within 150 feet. You can make that calculation and submit it to Building and Housing, and if it works, then that's great, and the councilman doesn't need to do anything. But based on what we saw, the overhead map showing one building on either side, it seemed like those buildings were set back more than you want to set back this apartment.
Mm-hmm.
No, Maurice, if you can show that picture again that shows the building.
Yeah, I think, Laura, that's correct. The multifamily homes, the multifamily apartments that are still there, however, a different story in phase 2. And so, Matt, all right. So can we can take action on the other items for this BZA meeting about the rear yard and the parking and the density? Is that possible to do
Absolutely,
today?
you can take action on those, and I don't really see any reason, if the board decides to grant them, I don't see any reason why they would hold ratification until the map setback ordinance passes. If the board grants these, no building permit will be issued unless and until Councilman Jones changes the map setback. If he does at that point, then they'll be entitled to get a building permit, and no further action of the Board of Zoning Appeals will be necessary. You would be active on items number 1. The item next to that, which is misidentified as 3, you could not act. The one after that, I identified as number 2, you can act. And one number 3, other number 3, you can act on that for the off-street parking. And then number 4, the board doesn't act on that because it has to go to City Planning Commission, which may or may not have happened, but.
We
received our planning commission approval.
We've got final approval with City Planning Commission.
Yeah, then that's good.
Can I ask one question about parking?
Yes, sir.
You say you have a need for how many parking spaces and you're fulfilling how many? And then what is the strategy for the remainder of the cars? Where do they park?
Well, the strategy is that the remainder of, not every apartment, not every tenant in this building will you have a car and will need a parking space.
Okay.
That's the strategy. We're so close to public transportation, within walking distance of the Cleveland Clinic and all these jobs that are available to workforce housing tenants, that we just don't believe we need that many cars.
So you're satisfying what percentage of occupant to car space?
Well, we have 69 provided and 123 are required. So I'd have to do the math on that. Matt, what do you have a calculator?
We're a little over 50%. We're at like 54%.
All right, it's a sensitive issue for us. That's why I bring it up.
Right.
All right.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
if I can make a comment, I was part of a meeting last week on transportation demand management, and among the participants was the transportation manager for UCI, University Circle Incorporated. Within their area is the VA Hospital, Cleveland Clinic, and UH. And the statement made by their transportation manager was that they are looking to increase housing in that area, and also with regard to housing for employees at the hospitals, most of the frontline workers, the nurses, the orderlies, that level of employee are, I think 60% was the figure that are reliant on public transportation. So there's a huge demand for housing within walking distance and on public transit lines, and obviously within, that are bikeable. So I think that impacts this project quite a bit, in that the planning, the housing is needed for the employees in that area, and particularly housing for the frontline employees that are not management, that are not the docs, the mid-level employees that are so heavily reliant on public transportation. So I just add that as a bit of information that I was able to learn last week at the meeting.
Will tenants be asked to pay for parking if they're going to be using it, or is that something first?
Yeah. Alexis or Lama, you'll have to respond to that.
A tenant has to pay. Beside the building across the street, lots of ours. So if there is a congestion of parking, we can use the other side too.
That's true. Yeah, there is additional park. There's a lot on the east side of East 90th that's owned by this group.
And they're going to fit that out to be a dedicated parking for the tenants?
It's an option if necessary, if required, if needed, basically.
All right.
Sounds like a plan. Any other questions, board? I will entertain a motion on 1, 2, and the second number 3.
Right. So, Madam Chair, if there's no further discussion, I would move that on number 1, number 2, that's really number 3, the second number 3, that's really number 4, that we go ahead and approve those. And did the appellant say that they have received approval from city planning?
Yes.
Yes, we have received final approval from city planning.
Okay, so we can do the number 1, number 3, number 4, number 5 is taken care of, so that's off our plate. And the first number 3, that's really number 2, is the only item we can't act on that Councilman Jones is going to be working on for you. So I move that we approve the specific specific items that I mentioned.
That was confusing, but I'll second that.
Call the roll, Liz.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And for the record, we are approving section 355.04, 357.08B1,
correct,
359.04A. Those are the only variances we would be granting today.
That is correct.
And I will call the roll. Mr. Donovan? Ms. Britt?
Yes.
Ms. Faith?
Yes.
Ms. Johnson?
Yes.
Calendar 21-012 is granted conditionally. It'll be ratified next week and we will send you a letter.
We did approve the parking too, correct? I'm sorry, we got the parking in that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay,
That's section 349.04A.
great. All right, thank you all very much.
Welcome.
Thank you. Good luck. Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you, bye.
Calendar 20-205 at 835 Brayton. Go ahead, Ms. Faith.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This case was postponed from January 11th, 2021. I will read the case into the record, and then I will need to make a statement following that. Calendar number 20-205 at 835 Brayton Avenue. Brett McCoy, owner, proposed to erect a 20-foot by 32-foot two-story frame rear in-law suite in a 16-foot by 49-foot two-story frame rear addition attached to an existing family residence in a B1 two-family residential district. The owner appeals for relief from the strict application of the Cleveland Codified Ordinances as stated in the agenda and the public record. Madam Chair, Dr. McCoy is my personal orthopedic doctor, so since he sticks large needles into my knees on a regular basis, I am going to be recusing myself from this case.
Look out, world. Go ahead.
That's right.
Timothy.
One thing I want to bring up before I read my statement, as usual, is that now we only have 3 board members, I believe,
That is correct.
that can vote. So it means
That's
that
right.
they have to have a unanimous decision here. And if the appellants do want to postpone this to get a full complement of the board, now would be the time to make that request.
This is Russell Randazzo on behalf of Dr. McCoy. He actually had to leave already to go to surgery, and we're going to waive that
Okay.
accordingly.
I'm not sure if you guys can hear me. This is Dr. McCoy. I'm actually on the call. I had to jump on my phone. I apologize. I had to run to work, but I have a little bit of time here, so I'm going to try to stay on as much as I can.
Great.
Okay, so you guys, are going to move forward. Fine. I'm going to read a statement. At the end of it, everyone who's going to testify, please respond with "I do" in your name. Here we go. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Name?
Russell Randazzo.
Okay.
Brett McCoy.
Okay.
Anyone else?
Donna Gregonis.
That's going to be it.
With Tremont West Development Corporation, I do.
Okay, anyone else? Hearing none, we move to history.
Thank you, Mr. Donovan and Madam Chair. There's been no change in zoning since 1929. I didn't find any records in the record room. I did find Madam Chair, that a variance or variances were granted to construct this townhouse development through calendar numbers 05-325 through 329. There were no conditions placed on that variance. And that is all that I have, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. The legal standard will be judging the case on, Ms. Wagner.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. Appellant is requesting area variances from the rear yard and distance regulations of the zoning code. To obtain the area variances, appellant must prove that denying the request will create a practical difficulty not generally shared by other land or buildings in the same district, will deprive the appellant of substantial property rights, and that granting the variances will not be contrary to the purpose and intent of the zoning code. And I would note, just for the record, since staff was initially confused about this. This is a two-family district, so there is not any kind of use variance required. It's simply the area variances from the yard and distance.
Thank you, Lou. Thank you, Lori. Okay, going to be the spokesperson. Dr. McCoy, are you going to be the spokesperson?
I was going to
Russell Randazzo
start if you can.
Okay, Russell.
Thank you, ma'am. So originally, I think we need to go back to 2019. That's where Mr. McCoy, who owned parcel D in the plot, purchased an additional plot of land that was actually owned by the city of Cleveland. It's adjacent in between his plot of land and another home, turned into essentially a wasteland. There was garbage, it was tires, just a dumping ground. Dr. McCoy purchased that property with the intent to clean it up and eventually develop it into an addition to his property. That deed was transferred in August of 2019 with no restrictions on his ability to do so. We're currently seeking to be able to put both an addition onto would be the west side of his existing residence, and then a separate in-law suite further to the west of that. Like was indicated previously, there were variances that needed to be granted for this entire development. There are 5 townhomes adjacent to his. His is a standalone home. But at the time that his was granted, if you're looking at the west side as the rear of his property, it needed a rear variance just for it to be built as is. He only had approximately 5 feet to the west of his property at the time that it was originally built. So he's actually going to have, for that west side being the rear of his property. The interesting part is that he has a Brayton Avenue address, which he does not actually abut or view to that. He's actually looking more towards West 9th or Fruit Avenue. Where his home is located, it's tucked back in a nook, so it's a little difficult. There should be some photographs of the property. They're probably going to be a little up towards the front.
Can we stick to the variances?
I think the photos will be a little more easier to explain where things are for purposes of what the foot restriction would be for variances.
Maurice, do you have pictures?
I'm sorry, what was that? What was that?
You
Could
have
be
those?
photographs. I think they were at the beginning.
I have the photographs that you sent in.
Yeah, so the red property, can you go to the earlier ones, the red property?
Oh, my pictures, you mean?
Yes. Okay, so if you're looking at these 4, the top 2 are the back side of the current existing, where the addition is going to be. It's a 2-story. but there's only 5 feet from the back of that to where the property line was. So there was previously already a variance granted for purposes of that construction. And then he added subsequently all of the land in the bottom 2 photos. That's all just trees, wood, and it was trash. So there's going to be additional backyard area that he can utilize larger than what there was originally when this was built. There's going to be the addition and then a distance of 8 foot between the back of the addition and the construction of the new in-law suites. At the west end of the in-law suite, between that and the next residence, there's going to be a varying amount of space between 5 and about 7 foot. In the close proximity on the same street, on Brayton and on Fruits, this board has previously granted variances to other construction projects that allow for much closer variances for new construction building between dwellings. This is going to be 8 foot. The photos that I provided show that there's as close as less than 3 feet between these projects. If you look at the photos that I did provide, there's one that's got the properties of 805 and 807 Brayton.
I'm having some technical issues right now.
Okay, we can look at those. I can go to whichever ones you'd like. Okay, so these are new construction on Brayton Avenue. The one to the left is 807 and 805. The distance between those 2 properties from wall to wall is only 6 foot. The requested amount of space between Dr. McCoy's is going to be 8 foot, so it would exceed this amount of area. The second picture to the right shows a 9 foot drive plus 2 feet on the side also. Additionally, that would have requested a variance for that property as well. I requested those as public records, never got them. If we go to the next group of photos.
Madam Chair, to Russell.
Yes.
Do you have a rendering of what the final product is going to look like? We understand the neighborhood and how close these houses are. We probably granted all those variances before, so.
Yep. Yeah, so here's the rendering with the addition. This would be looking to the east. So that sloped down is all the new addition space. It's technically a 2-story complex. And then if you go, there's no color renderings or anything like that, but these are, the bottom one is looking from the south side towards the north side. So that would be where like 490 actually is. The existing portion goes over until the point where you up. So you've got those windows in the fireplace that would be all of the new addition. That's the 20-foot addition. And then the in-law suite would be to the west of that. That's just the diagram of the addition portion of it. Similarly, the interior requirements of the addition. There should be, this is the in-law suite that's going, that door, the front door is actually going to be on Fruit. So it'll have a entrance towards the Fruit Avenue side. And it's...
So this is Johnson. This is not a separate building. It is attached to the main house.
This portion right here is a completely standalone, separate structure. It will be, I believe, a one-bedroom loft area. The intention is that it's only to be used by Dr. McCoy's family when they visit, so that they don't have to stay in his residence. It's for no other purposes other than his own family.
Yeah, I don't blame him.
Okay, great.
But yeah, similar, like you've already said, I mean, the variances that are required for everything in this area are actually smaller than what is being proposed for these new structures. The increase in the property value based on what was there being just essentially a wasteland that the neighborhood had to try and keep up and clean up. It's a very obscure little area, so it's not seen by a lot of people, so people were basis there. So Dr. McCoy is certainly increasing the appearance and the overall value of the neighborhood by completing this project.
Number two of things that were it was that it only has 8 feet between the main house and this extra house, and it should be 40 feet.
Yeah, so that's what I was trying to explain earlier. So they are rendering that is the back. And originally when that was built, there was only about 5 feet to the back. So there has to already be a variance for that because there wasn't 40 feet available at that point.
Yeah, and he's basically impeding on his own property. It's not like
his own property.
He's not impeding on someone else's.
No, that right there is impeding on his own property from the existing structure plus addition onto the new standalone.
I got it. Maurice, can you go to the variances list, please?
Oh, the variance list? Yes.
Yes. And so really, I mean, outside of number 3, these variances are for in addition to into his own property. So he's not affecting any neighbor like that. So I don't.
There's one neighbor on the other side of the vacant land that he purchased where the in-law suite is going to be. The distance between that is similar. I believe it's between 5 to 8 foot. This was passed unanimously by the block club, including that neighbor having absolutely no objection to that being proposed. So not only that, but also Councilman McCormick has also asserted his approval and full support of this development as well.
Well, I'm sure they prefer building over tires. So.
Is there anybody else that was going to testify?
This is
we had Donna Gregonis.
I'd like to hear from them.
Go ahead.
One at a time. Was there somebody else who wanted to speak? Okay, state your name.
Donna Gregonis with Tremont West Development Corporation.
Yes. And your comments?
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the board. So this agenda item went to the local block club and it was supported by them. And additionally, this also went to the Tremont West Economic Development Committee and it was also supported. All the variances were supported by the Economic Development Committee as well at Tremont. So thank you very much.
Thank you for coming. Okay, anybody else? They don't want to skip over.
This is Brett McCoy. I just wanted to say, from the standpoint of the goals of this project, you know, I got engaged in this house and I went through chemotherapy as a patient in this house. And so my brother and sister are business owners in Tremont. So I don't want to do the sort of suburban move because I'm running out of space. So really the goal is I was trying to encompass in this project everything that could keep me in Tremont for as long as possible because I love the neighborhood. So I know that's not a variant specific thing, but that's, you know, versus, you know, a lot of the developers and things like that. This is a project for me and my immediate family. So I just wanted to say that. Thank you guys for your time.
Thank you very much, Doctor, and good luck to you. Any other questions, board? If not, I will entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, given the testimony and support from the councilman, the CDC, as well as the adjacent neighbor, I move that we approve the variances as requested for calendar number 21-205, noting that number 3, section 34102B, we can't give.
Second.
Call the roll.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Wait.
Yes, if you called me, I couldn't hear. Sorry.
Thank you. Sorry, and Ms. Johnson.
Yes.
Calendar 20-205 is granted. It'll be ratified next week, and we will send you a letter.
Thank you.
Right.
Okay, thank you all. On old business, we need 2 affirmations because we didn't have any cases last week that we could ratify. One on Warren Road, and if they needed more time for construction drawings due to the contractors and the COVID.
Without objection.
Okay, and on Lee Road, the Volunteers of America, pretty much the same thing.
Without objection.
Without
objection.
Okay, great.
All right.
Madam Chair, I did get a text message from Marlene. She had a family emergency, so she wasn't able to make it this morning.
Okay. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you all. See you next week.
Bye.
See you.
Bye.
Bye.